Hello, everybody. My name is PK Much, and I am super happy to have been or wanted to be part of this amazing conference today. I got the time wrong. I can't believe that happened to me. It was the 1 hour time difference. So I decided I would record this presentation and make it available to anyone and everyone at the conference who is interested in it. I'm super happy to have been invited to be part of this conference, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to contribute. And also, this has been a great opportunity to connect with a bunch of other speakers that I've gotten to know over the years, Leslie Kern, Lauren McEwen, and so many others. So I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you in person, but at least we reconnect at least in some sort of way. Anyways, today's session is about how to publish and not publish a anti-capitalist feminist magazine, The Life and Times of Lisbeth.com. Essentially, what we had originally planned was 30 minutes, about 15 minutes of sort of setting up the stage about Lisbeth and sort of how we got there, 10 minutes for discussion. It was a really short period for an actual workshop. And I am happy to offer a actual in-depth workshop at a later date, which I will share a time and date with the organizers. Uh, Essentially, we were going to move into a discussion, the workshop part, about at the end of the day, Elizabeth was not sustainable. And we were going to put it out to all of you to say what actually went wrong, what do you see, what would you have done if you were us, and then a 5 minute wrap up. So that's essentially what we were working towards today. Let's get started. All right, so first, three things that I felt was important to know about me as we're diagnosing the Lisbeth story. First, I am a cis white het 63-year-old woman, which kind of makes me a geriatrics Gen Xer or a preemie boomer, depending on how you slice the years. I'm sort of right on the cusp. I emigrated here as a child from northern Germany in the late 1960s, and I still consider Lübeck my family home and German my first language. I have a 25-year-old daughter, a cat. My partner is a professional musician and operates a sound recording studio, Harlow Sound, here in Toronto. I'm a punk music fan and also an amateur collage artist. The second thing to know about me is I'm an experienced serial entrepreneur. Lisbeth was not my first rodeo. I also had 20 years experience as a publishing professional working for large companies like McGraw-Hill and others in New York and Toronto. My Inside the Beast experiences kind of form my thoughts and theories and ideas I hold today about capitalism, commerce, entrepreneurship's role in just societies, and ideas about the generative potential of feminist entrepreneurship as a very particular variant in the entrepreneurship landscape. The third and last thing I thought you might want to know about me is my feminism. In 1949, Simone de Beauvoir wrote that one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. So I believe similarly that feminists are made and not born as well. I'm certainly no exception. We don't have time for all the stories previewed on the slides today, but let's just say my feminism was forged by a lot of lived experience, as I'm sure yours was too. My feminism today aligns primarily with Marxist, socialist, and intersectional feminist theory and thought. The feminist movement ultimately is a lifesaver, or at least it was for me. It's where I found strength, solidarity, and a lot of new ideas that are sorely needed during the whole of my entire life. So thank you, feminism. Now, on with Elizabeth's story, or let's start here. In 2012, at 50 years old, I had what feminist writer Sarah Ahmed called a feminist snap. The story behind it is for another session or another day, but for clarity, a feminist snap is not just a single outburst, but a turning point where bottled up experiences of sexism, classism, other forms of oppression and violence leads to acts of refusal and resistance that can spark new feminist actions, solidarities, and ways of living. That's a quote. And that certainly was the case for me. There were lots of times I just about had enough, but really 2012 was the snap. Part of what started this snap was a divorce, and which led to the sale of my beloved artisanal cheese company that I had built out in Prince Edward County. And this snap led to my starting a feminist magazine and digital media company called Lisbeth. The name for Lisbeth was actually inspired by Lisbeth Salander, which most of you may remember as the heroine of the Stieg Larsson Swedish novels, which actually The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo came out in 2010. And her energy, and even though a fictional character, was the kind of voice and energy I really wanted Lisbeth to have. I wanted it to be badass, take no prisoners, enough with the bullshit type of voice and kind of vibe. The editorial concept for Lisbeth was to source publish mid and long form stories, roughly around 1,200 to 16 or 2,000 words, which was really long for media at that point in time, long for it today. But we were interested in longer form narratives that really unpacked issues and problems in current events. We wanted essays and profiles about serious radical feminists who were building intentionally anti-capitalist enterprises, and that includes our definition of enterprise, and you'll see me use the word enterprise instead of business a lot, because nonprofits and cooperatives and collectives are enterprises as well. They just have different tax structures and different legal structures. But essentially, it's about organizing resources to get something done. And so I use the word enterprise a lot. So we essentially wanted to highlight and write about any type of enterprise that tried to challenge capitalism and norms and patriarchy. We didn't care about SEO. We didn't do any of that stuff. We hope to be found through our social media and also event activity and partnerships and things like that. We also wrote about feminist enterprise scholarship and theory, including works by Barbara Orser, Dr. Barbara Orser at Ottawa U, Dr. C.V. Harquail in Chicago now, and many, many others. We wanted to, Sarah Kaplan from Rotman. We wanted to demonstrate that feminist entrepreneurship was also not just a form of activist entrepreneurship, but also a very active, vibrant, scholarly space as well. At the time, I estimated the readership market to be maybe 50,000. We knew it was a niche spot and not a huge market, but I believed that the idea and its role, the idea's role in society was just too important not to amplify and supportive. I really believed that if we put it out there, more people would come to know and think about what feminist entrepreneurship is, isn't, and what it can do as a force for change in our society and our economy and how we do business. So after a year of startup work, Lisbeth was launched officially in November 2016. And this was a great time to launch a feminist enterprise magazine. Although a lot of people said, what a crazy idea. There is no such thing as feminist enterprise. Feminists, on the one hand, basically felt that if you were involved in any enterprise work of any kind, you were a handmaiden of capitalism, and so therefore not really a feminist. And at the same time, the women's entrepreneurship space were terrified of the word feminism. And in fact, we had some articles we wanted to write about certain entrepreneurs where the entrepreneurs said they did not want to be featured for fear out of losing customers and investors. So it turned out to be a good year, though, because there was a lot of interest in women's rights, women's advancement, equity, social justice, and of course, since that time, there were many other big moments in our collective history. The brand look and feel for Lisbeth, I really wanted it to be inspired by feminist zines, and so we used a lot of illustrations and collage style artwork. Actually, JJ Steves did a lot of our artwork, and she's a local Halifax artist. We deliberately chose a set of font styles that were created by women font designers and implemented those. It had a bit of a typewriter feel originally, but was changed later for accessibility reasons. But we still chose a woman font designer. we had chose the colors red and black, the colors of revolution, and we felt those were appropriate brand colors for us. Along with the magazine, we had other things that we wanted to do as a digital media company. We launched a conference called the Entrepreneurial Feminist Forum, known as the EFs. And the first one drew over 100 participants. It was at OCAD-U and we had people from presenters and participants from the US and across Canada. And then a year later, we drew about 220 to the Daniels Center in 2018. We also partnered with Jane's Walk and other organizations, but particularly Jane's Walk. And our idea here was to hold the Feminist City Walk annually, and over 70 attended the first one. It was capped off by a seminar, a moderated panel on feminism in the city, and that was held at the Center for Social Innovation. We also had a monthly editorial newsletter. I say editorial because it actually was additional content that was not on the website. And this was a source of discussion in our editorial work because some people felt that they were too different and they should actually more closely align. The newsletter should bring people to the website, and the website should bring people to the newsletter. We did integrate the two eventually, but still editorially, they were both very different. And we actually had little overlap between the readers of the newsletter and those who actually visited and read stories on the website. It's kind of a Venn diagram, but that was an interesting bifurcation, if you will. We also finally, we didn't intend to do a lot of investigative reporting, but we were basically led to it because we would receive lots of tips from people in the space saying, this is happening, can you do something? And so we did publish and do some articles. This one in particular, Model Mob, had to do with the new executive director of Next 36 at the University of Toronto. And basically, we got tips that a lot of things were not going well there for women in general. And it was basically, I guess I would say, a tech bro culture that was starting to be infused, and they had events with awards for entrepreneurs and took the entrepreneurs to strip joints and things like that, which was really inappropriate. And eventually, because of this article, that person was let go. And we had other examples of situations where we were able to make a meaningful difference. Our editorial team in 2021 and further on grew from just 3 or 4 of us to a broader range of us. Everyone was freelance. No one was a full-time employee because of the micro scale of the venture, but we paid very good wages and above union rates for editorial wages, and we also paid above union rates for writers, and I'll get to that in a moment. We held regular AGMs, annual general meetings, and invited our contributors and freelancers and supporters and readers, and we had become a pretty vibrant community. And finally, we also participated in activism and solidarity. We eventually got rid of the X here, but essentially we were out there participating in International Women's Day the entire time, and other protests and marches as well. We did a lot of advocacy work and donations and amplification of other people's work as well. We signed petitions. We had a section in our newsletter that included calls to action. We also promoted feminist writers and publishers. We launched a show called the Fine Print Show, which was a video interview, video and audio interview with feminist writers that was led by Lana Pesh. And and we had reading lists and things like that as well. And apart from all of our customer-facing or reader-facing work, our real interest was in how to actually run a feminist business in the backside, and what could we do to change how businesses are actually operating and run by being a model for what an anti-capitalist business could look like. And so we regularly revisited our feminist business model and via the feminist business model canvas, which is now being now a course that you can take through the Canadian Women's Foundation. We had our own ideas and guideposts about what a feminist business should look like and what the key tenets should be, and you see them here. We had an upside down governance model where the board was actually in service of everyone else. And we, in terms of the results over the years that we ran, we published, and I'm not going to read all of these out to you, but just making the point, we did a lot of things, produced a lot of work, and including almost 500 original articles, again, average size around 800 to 2,000 words, published 72 newsletters, 9 the fine print shows. We had about 30,000 unique readers monthly on the website, 2,700 newsletter subscribers. We also launched a feminist enterprise online space through Mighty Networks, and we had about 150 members where we did courses and held regular conversations and workshops. We had the Entrepreneurial Feminist Forum event. We did a whole range of other events along the way, training events, workshops, as I say, and so forth. And we overall brought a lot of awareness to the feminist enterprise genre in Canada, at the very least. Over 60% of our writers were early stage emerging writers, and we are pleased that many of them had their careers launched through Lisbeth. We created a lot of indirect economic activity. We won an editorial award for our newsletter and other types of recognition. Our key anti-capitalist policies included, the main tenet was fair pay and either union or writers union or above cost of living rates, and for writers, editors, and all freelancers. And we were known for paying very well, which is why we only published 1 or 2 articles a month, even though our cadence meant, that was kind of a slow cadence compared to other online publications, but this was really important to us. And we also paid our freelancers extremely well. We also paid fast. We didn't think people should wait till the end of the month to get paid. We paid on a weekly or bi-weekly basis as soon as the work was done and in. And we also worked to ensure that at least 50% of our stories were written by or featured women of color, trans women, and trans men as well. We wrote about trans men with feminist businesses. Not all women are feminists, and not all feminists are women. So we featured that also. Key strategies, I think I mentioned some of these. We also had no advertising. We felt that would we thought about it and talked to some advertisers who might be interested, but it would result in us toning down our anti-capitalist rhetoric. So we aligned with some feminist organizations, but essentially there weren't a lot out there that felt comfortable aligning with an anti-capitalist feminist publication. Other key strategies we had was, as a business anyways, or enterprise, was I very much, as the founder, did not want to borrow money or get investment to scale this or to grow this enterprise. First of all, grants and loans and things like that only happen once. But if you can get someone to sign up as a reader or as a subscription, that is ongoing all the time, and you can build stronger from there. That's my belief anyway, and that's what we focused on. We did not pursue any loans or investment on purpose. We felt we could grow one customer at a time and get to a sustainable size and scale that way. We had an open source collaborative ethos. We shared everything and anything. If people wanted to repub any of our articles, that was fine with us. We didn't charge for that. We did a lot of research and spent a year crafting feminist organizational bylaws to do a better job of governance. And ultimately, our politics were non-negotiable. As I said, some people didn't want to write for us, some people didn't want to be profiled by us, and some people basically didn't even want to sign up as readers. I know some folks I have talked to said, I don't want my name associated with a feminist magazine. Anyways, now here comes the commerce part of the story. The key points, it's a little bit small to see on the slide here, but essentially what the financial story tells you over the 6 or 7 years since we started is that over the life of the publication, we broke even. And the $15,000 I personally invested in the startup, I was able to get my original investment back. However, I never took a salary or was paid for my work as a publisher and managing editor. I basically did that as a volunteer throughout the entire life of Lisbeth. Um, as the magazine grew, and it grew, it was growing, and it was becoming a bigger and bigger thing. Eventually, I had to decide what to do because the volunteer part of my work life with Lisbeth was getting way bigger. And at the same time, as a single mother, I needed to earn enough money. And Lisbeth, my volunteer work, was starting to cut into my ability to earn a living. And I did think quite carefully about could I pay myself out of Lisbeth, but at the end, eventually, but at the end of the day, Lisbeth still needed to grow in order to get us to that point. So after a time, and while that was happening, of course, COVID hit. And then everything changed. And this was true of a lot of small micro businesses, and it certainly hit us as well. We saw our subscriptions go down as people lost jobs or everybody was unclear about what was happening. And I knew that by 2021 or 2022 that we needed to uncouple from Lisbeth and give it to someone or some organization that could take it from there. We weren't interested in selling it or anything like that other than, a nominal $1 price tag in order to take it and build it up through the next step, which I believed was a feminist form of exit because I didn't want to close it. We wanted it to continue, but we needed to find a home or a host for it that could take it from here, pass the baton approach. So that is how we eventually arrived with Rabble.ca. They had been a partner of ours for a couple of years now, a content partner, and they were willing to merge it in their operations like they had done with the Georgia Strait. So that's what we did. Um, this leads us to finishing the story of Lisbeth and wanting to ask you, what could we have done differently to make it more sustainable, to continue its growth? What would you have done differently? And this is the part where I'm sorry we are not able to be in a discussion with each other, but I invite you to think about it, and by all means, don't hesitate to send me your thoughts to petra@evolution.com. I'll share some of that here. My own thoughts about what really kind of what we didn't anticipate. There are basically three things other than COVID, which we didn't anticipate either. The first one is I know personally I didn't see this coming. I didn't realize that a feminist enterprise magazine would be generally seen as neither fish nor fowl, and ergo maybe doomed from the start. A few years later, after we started, Joshua Davis, a researcher, a U.S. Professor and researcher, published a book about activist entrepreneurship called Head Shops, From Head Shops to Whole Foods. And his research about feminist activist enterprises in the 1970s found that feminist activists saw business as fundamentally at odds with women's liberation. In other words, feminism and business don't belong in the same room. And some leading movement non-business women viewed feminist entrepreneurs, people who started things like feminist credit unions or feminist bookstores and things like that, were exploiters and were ripping off feminism. And a few years later, Andy Zeisler, I think her book came out in 2018 actually, on Marketplace Feminism, sort of amplified that idea as well. So we were struggling in the feminist space with being accepted. And on the entrepreneurship side and in the business space, we also struggled being accepted because women entrepreneurs and the women entrepreneurship industry or ecosystem and industry did not think it was a good idea to align themselves with a feminist publication. So the efforts to knit feminist businesses or enterprises plus non-feminist nonprofit organizations as well was also difficult because a lot of small publications like this, if you take Bitch Magazine, for example, are supported by larger institutions or grants. And again, we sort of didn't fit in either camp neatly, which made it really hard to find meaningful sponsorship. And finally, the anti-capitalist tone, we often critique capitalism in business, rendered us kind of untouchable. But we weren't anti-capitalist enough for most feminist organizations. The other thing that I think we did know about, having had experience in publishing, was just the general industry pitfalls. Publishing is not an easy business. I think anybody in it knows that. If you study it, you know that as well. I know Elizabeth Groenwald is here at the conference as well, and I want to thank her for her amazing work making feminist media, which certainly I read and was informed by. But feminist publications don't live a long time in general, and especially in Canada, there are some long-termers like Horizons, The Room, and some literary feminist magazines. But essentially, and especially digital magazines, tend to come and go. And part of the reason for that is the feminism itself changes. So sometimes feminist niche publications start in response to a current issue or topic, and then that topic sort of fizzles out, and so does the publication. Feminist publications are not immune to broader industry challenges. Many get acquired and then lose their edgy feminist voice. Finally, the third thing that impacted us from my perspective is just burnout. I'm not talking just about entrepreneurial burnout or, that kind of stuff, starting a business or any type of enterprise burnout, which happens to everybody who embarks on this type of thing or any team. The second driver of burnout was really activist burnout. There was always something going on that needed an immediate response. We actually tried to advertise on social media, and social media platforms like Facebook actually blocked our ads. I investigated it and said, why? And they said, I have a letter to, this is of course, 2018, they've changed since then, but they said feminism is a political organization or political movement, and they don't want to support that. Can you believe that? So we couldn't use ads on Facebook, and we also had the attendant trolls and harassment as well happening, which always takes a bit of a toll, and not always from men, but sometimes from women as well. There was the added emotional labor of dealing with traumatized women writers and journalists and readers. We really did want to work with emerging writers and others, and we had a care ethos related to that. So we really took our time. We took time to listen. We actually allowed, I say this because in some publications this would never be allowed, but we had our writers actually preview the final version before it went up to give it sort of one last chance, because we definitely didn't want to put up a piece that was going to cause anyone any additional trauma. And sometimes writers themselves don't notice something until later on. And so we wanted to make sure that they were happy with the piece and we were happy with the piece too. We had, essentially a lot of emotional labor, and activist burnout also made it hard for us to keep up the pace. Finally, in closing, I wanted to quote Nancy Fraser, who I'm a fan of, And she says capitalism is, in her book, Cannibal Capitalism, capitalism is no longer an economic system. It's become a social system. And that's really important because it's not just an economic system, about enterprise. It's actually infiltrated how we think and what we embrace, what we're afraid of. And I think that also made a feminist publication that was kind of kind of how should I, well based on feminist enterprise work business, and also at the same time anti-capitalist, a bit of a difficult sell even to readers. And finally, in closing, I wanted to leave you with a couple of calls to action. When you do see a new feminist magazine out there, please support it, or a feminist book. That goes without saying, I think, with this audience. I think we should also be advocating for specialized feminist media funding, not just feminist organization funding, because those organizations need voices, and we can drive new ideas and help build a more equitable society if we actually had a really strong feminist media space. Just like we're doing a lot to fund new indie media outlets in Canada through new funding mechanisms, I think we also need to carve out an envelope for feminist media publishing. I want to invite everybody to join the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce because inside there is the Feminist Enterprise Commons, where a group of us from the original FEC from Lisbeth continue to meet. We've been going for 9 years strong now, and if you're interested in the conversation of business, enterprise work and feminism, you can join us there. Also, the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce is a feminist advocacy organization. It's not just a women's version of Chambers of Commerce. Their main advocacy platform is centered on self-employment and self-employed women, and I won't speak more about that now, but encourage you to look at it. The other thing I wanted to leave you with is a thank you and a link to download the Lisbeth Manifesto poster here. It's kind of a collector's item, so I wanted to share that with you in case you're interested. And there's a picture of it. I also created a Google Drive folder that you can access where we have our bylaws and we have a number of other resources in there that you might be interested in if you are thinking of starting your own feminist publication. With that, this is a link to the Wyatt in case you're interested in that. And if you want to learn any more about any of this, you can contact me at petra@evolution.com. And thank you all for being here. I am so sorry that I missed my time. I can't believe it. I feel horrible about it. But I'm hoping this will make up for it a little bit. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the conference.